Hello and welcome to another video from F-Stop Training. My name is Martin and in this video I would like to show you the Content Aware Fill technology within Photoshop. The Content Aware Fill within Photoshop I think is absolutely amazing technology. Content Aware Fill can be used to easily remove distractions from your images. The latest version of Content Aware Fill is much faster and far more accurate than it was when it first appeared in Photoshop. To see what it can do, let's have a look at an image that contains some small distractions. This image here I have of a couple celebrating their wedding. Now it's a nice image, but there are some distractions. To highlight the distractions I want to remove, let me just create a new layer here and I'll select my brush tool, and with a bright colour red I can easily highlight them to you. So I want to remove this clump of leaves, I want to remove this clump of leaves. If you look up at the top of the image we have some leaves overhanging here, I would like to get rid of them. There is a white concrete pillar in the background that's a bit of a distraction too. And last but not least we have a large white boulder on the pathway here, which I would also like to get rid of. So let me first of all just delete that layer, and to make sure that I'm not destroying my original image and I'm able to work non-destructively, I will copy my background layer. I can do that either by dragging down to the create new layer icon and letting go, or with background layer selected I can press Command J or Control J and that will duplicate the layer on top for me. Now I can work seamlessly. So the easiest way to use Content Aware technology is to grab any of your selection tools and create a loose selection around the area that you want to patch. So in this case, I'm just going to select a lasso tool and I'm going to create a loose selection around the first clump of trees on the pathway here. Now all I have to do is go to the Edit menu, select Fill, and this brings up the Fill dialog box. This Fill dialog box presents us with some options, and all we really need to do with this is make sure that we have Content Aware selected. You can see there are a few options, but we want Content Aware, and that we have the Color Adaptation box selected. With those two options in place, I'll press OK, and Photoshop uses Content Aware to patch my selection. To select the next area, I first have to remove that selection, so I'll press Ctrl D, and now with the same lasso tool I can select around this brown clump of leaves, back up to Edit, down to Fill, the same settings are in place, and I'll press OK, and Photoshop patches it. Press Ctrl D, and that's completely seamless. So now let's move on to the leaves that are hanging down from the top of the image. And what I would like to do is use a different tool that also uses Content Aware Fill. If I go down here on the toolbar, I have the Spot Healing Brush tool sitting by default. If I press and hold that, I get a flyout menu, and from here I want to select the Patch tool. With the Patch tool selected, you'll notice that the options bar along the top here changes. What we want to do is make sure that next to Patch, we have Content Aware selected. We have a choice of Normal and Content Aware. We want Content Aware. The structure and the colour dialog we will look at in a moment. First of all, I want to zoom in to the overhanging leaves, and with the Patch tool, I simply create a very rough and loose selection around the leaves. Now with that selection in place, when I move inside the selection, my cursor changes to a Patch tool with an arrow. This tells me that I can now click and drag to a new area of the image to select as the source. So I will click and drag over to this area here. And as I let go, Photoshop patches that area. Now to see what the structure and the colour numbers do, let me first of all hide the marching ants by pressing Ctrl H. That's Command H on a Mac. The selection is still in place, it's just simply that I've removed the marching ants. If we take structure first of all, the structure option allows you to select a value from 1 all the way up to 7 to tell Photoshop how closely the patched area should resemble the source area. 1 is a rough match and 7 is a very close match. And as I move this backwards and forwards, you can actually see the patched area changing. At its highest value of 7, we can see that we have a clear line around the patch. In this case, that's not very useful, so I'm going to turn it down low to about 1. The leaves are already in the background, they're out of focus, therefore we do not need to patch them accurately. And again, I'm going to turn it right down to 1. The colour option allows you to select a value from 0 to 10. This tells Photoshop how strongly you want to apply its own blending algorithm. So here we have 0 and here we have 10. 10 will apply a lot of blending and 0 will apply no blending. Sometimes with 0 you have a hard line around the patched area, which doesn't look good obviously, and at 10 you have too much smudging going on. In this case the smudging doesn't bother me, so let me take this up quite high to about 6, and that actually looks quite good. So I'm happy with that. What I have to remember here is I still have my selection in place. I will press Command H and that will bring back the marching ants, and then Command D to deselect. Now let me zoom back out to the white concrete pillar. Again, I'm going to use the patch tool for this, and I will select the small white circular area to the top. Now I can simply drag to another source area. I'm going to pick an area that's not too close, that way we won't see a repeating pattern, but it is similar. In this case, just about here, I'll let go, and I think that looks good with the settings of 1 and 6 up above. Press Command D and that deselects. Now let's try the big white patch. Again, a very rough and loose selection around the white concrete pillar, and I will drag it to an area, let me try here. And when I let go, again I think Photoshop has done an excellent job. I'll press Command D to deselect. Now let me zoom out and tackle the large white stone on the right hand side. This may be a bit tougher for Photoshop, but let's see how we get on. Still with the patch tool selected, I'm going to draw a rough and loose selection around the white stone. Now, something that I notice with this is that the grass and the path form a clear line, and I want to make sure that I continue that line through the area that I'm going to patch. So when I grab and move my selection, I have to make sure that it lines up. Photoshop shows me a preview, and I have to make sure this lines up. I'm not going to worry about the white pixels that are slightly overlapping. The new content aware fill within Photoshop is clever enough to deal with that, I hope. So let me release my mouse and see what happens. And again, I think Photoshop has done an excellent job of that. Let's refine it. I'll press Command H to hide the marching ants. And in structure, let's just throw the sliders from one side to the other. And I think 7 is definitely too high. 4 is still too high. Let me come down to 2. And I think it was fine where it was at 1. Colour. No colour adaptation, that looks quite good, and if I take it all the way up to 10, you can see where too much colour can cause too much smudging. So in this case, let me take it down to 2 and see how it looks. I think that looks quite good. I'm going to leave it there. Press Command H to bring back my marching ants, Command D to deselect. We still have the shadow remaining that was being cast by the stone. Couple of options, we can use a patch tool or we can use the stamp tool to clone it out. Let's try the patch tool. Again, draw a loose selection around the shadow and drag to an area that we want to patch it with. Command H to hide the marching ants, and I think it looks fine. Command D just to deselect. Let me zoom out to the full image and see what we've got. If we look at the image before and after, I think you'll agree that the content-aware technology within Photoshop is very quick and absolutely seamless. The next thing I want to look at that still uses content-aware technology is the content-aware move tool. In this next image that I have, this image was shot during one of our Tuscany workshops, and what I want to do is move this white cloud over to above the mountain. I believe it will just add a bit more balance to the composition. So rather than using the patch tool, I'm using Content Aware Move tool, which is in the same group as the patch tool. So click and hold on the group and select Content Aware Move tool from the flyout menu. Again, if we look at our options bar at the top, we have Mode, and we have two modes in here. We have Move and we have Extend. For this example, I want Move. Structure and Color mean exactly the same. Sample all layers will sample all the pixels all the way down through all the layers, and Transform on Drop is checked. This option will allow us to change the size of the area that we move. I'll leave it highlighted so that you can see exactly what this does. So this works more or less the same way. You create a loose selection around area you wish to move, in this case the white cloud, and I'm being careful not to select any of the tree here, only white cloud and blue sky. Now with that selection in place, I simply click and drag to where I want the cloud to be, and I will move it to roughly around about there. Now you can see the bounding box which gives me control handles. This allows me to click and resize the source that I'm moving. In this case, I'll resize it just slightly. When I'm happy with it, I can either press the tick on the options bar, or I can simply press enter or return. Now we can clearly see the structure and the color options coming into play. Again, I'm going to press Command H and let me just zoom in on this area a wee bit. The settings that we have are actually very good for this. We have 2 in the structure and 5 in the color. But let's just move them back and forth so that you can see the difference they make. Structure all the way to the top. You can see that we have a hard blue line round it, and it very closely resembles the area that we sourced from. If I move it all the way down to 1, it's a very, very gradual fade from the source image to the area that we're moving it. It may be a bit too smudgy for here. Let me pull this up to 3, and that's too much. And I'll put it back to 1. Now let's try the color option and see what this does. Down at 0 we have no color adaptation at all, and we have a hard edge around the area. All the way up at 10 it becomes, I think, slightly too smudgy. So let me take it halfway and see how it does. 6 looks good. And the cloud has been moved. Now the problem is we still have this area of the leaves that Photoshop has filled in to try and replace, and it's not done a great job, but that's easily enough fixed with Content Aware Patch. So we will select a patch tool, just move my image. I'm pressing the space bar here to drag my image around, and let me just select the area that I'm not happy with, and we will patch it from, let me see, about here. And I think that looks quite good where it is. Structure is at its lowest, and the colour, let me try and blend a wee bit more, that looks better. Control deselect, and if I press Control 0, that will take me out to the full size of the image, and we can see that the cloud has been moved, and is providing, I think, a bit more balance to the image. This image, as I say, was shot one of our trips to Tuscany, and at the time of taking the image I realised that the cloud not being above the mountain was going to cause an imbalance in the composition. So I decided to hang around and wait to see if the cloud would move. However, I very quickly realised that the cloud was going in the wrong direction and was actually creeping in behind the tree. So I grabbed the shot, knowing full well that I could use this technology in Photoshop to do what nature wasn't doing for me and move the cloud. It provides, I think, far better balance. So we've looked at quite a lot in this video. Let me quickly sum up what we did. We looked at using any selection tool to create a loose selection around the distraction and then removing it by using the fill option found under the edit menu. Next, we looked at using the patch tool along with the structure and colour sliders to refine the patched area. And finally, we used the Content Aware Move tool to move objects to a different area of the photograph. If you found this video useful, please visit our website at fstoptraining.com, where we have details about our exquisite Tuscany workshops, as well as exclusive offers and discounts for all our subscribers. Our site also features articles with hints and tips, and if you'd like to contribute an article to our site, simply navigate to the contact page and select a form from the drop-down list. Thank you for watching, and please comment below.